Hello, and welcome to with Redstage and Nexcess. In this live Q&A session, two Magento experts will answer questions about e-commerce technical debt and discuss the pros and cons of upgrading and maintaining e-commerce systems. Submit your questions in the chat section throughout the webinar to ask a question. If we don't get to your question during the live session, someone will reach out to you after the session to assist if we can. Now, to introduce our speakers, Oliver, please tell us about yourself.
Hi everyone, Oliver Sosinsky here. I've been a senior solutions engineer with Redstage for about 5 years now. I'm certified as a Magento 1 and Magento 2 solution specialist. I also sit on the Magento Certification Advisory Board.
Thanks, Ollie. Miguel, please tell us about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Miguel here. I've been with Nexcess for the last 5 years. I'm also one of the guys maintaining Magento 2 on GitHub as the part of the community engineering team. I'm also a Magento certified solution specialist, 4 times Magento Master, and I'm also part of the Magento Association content committee.
Thanks, guys. All right, so to get to our first question, what is technical debt and why should online sellers care?
Well, we define tech debt as the implied cost of implementing simpler solutions and leave the heavy work for the future, something that will never happen, instead of resolving the actual problem from the very beginning using a better and usually more complex solution.
Absolutely. It's the practice of avoiding investment in tech in favor of a more maintenance-only approach. We hear people say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, which is a great short-term approach, but in the long term, that leads to missed opportunities and kind of falling behind the competition.
All right, here's another one. What are the top threats facing online merchants right now regarding technical debt?
So security is a huge concern, obviously. Security threats evolve as time goes on. So what might be secured today isn't going to be secure tomorrow. But web usage also evolves. People are not using the web in the same way they were even 3 or 4 years ago. So a failure to stay kind of ahead of that curve just means falling behind the competition.
Yep. For me, it's definitely outdated software and dependencies. Developers don't seem to realize you have to actually maintain the things you use instead of a one-off install. And that really shows when it comes to like Magento 2.0 and that kind of stuff, mostly because people actually believe that you install Magento and that's pretty much it, and you don't have to maintain that in the future. And that's where the issues begin.
What are some of the technical debt-related issues companies face?
So I think one of the biggest issues is the e-commerce community as a whole can't afford to continuously support outdated and legacy software. Platforms and third-party services are all built for up-to-date software and platforms. So one of the biggest complaints we hear is that it's too hard to add new features. We spend all our time maintaining and building things from scratch. And I think that's really the biggest risk is missing out on the opportunity to use the latest and greatest that the industry has to offer.
Yep, I agree with Oliver. Most of the hacks we see are usually caused by some form of technical debt, and that's usually outdated software in the form of an old Magento version or like using an old PHP or Apache version just because it works in your setup. So this can lead to like PCI issues among other stuff that will cost any company way more than doing things right from the very beginning.
Great. And what are some examples that each of you have seen of companies facing technical debt?
Companies are reluctant to upgrade major systems like e-commerce platforms or ERP systems until they're really forced off by an issue that comes up. So when an immediate ROI is hard to quantify, it's easier to keep things running than to take a perceived risk in the short term.
Yep, to me, this looks like don't upgrading sites. For me, it's by far the most common form of technical debt we've seen. This usually ends up with an unpatched store being breached, and we all know how that looks. It's not pretty, and most of the people is like, why is my store being hacked? And my answer is, well, did you maintain that? Did you upgrade the underlying software? Did you actually ask somebody to go and take a look at your site? And the answer is usually no. So yeah, it's not pretty, but it happens a lot, sadly.
Exactly. That's a good example of being forced off that we see a lot as well. Is finally, you know, that risk stops paying off and the site gets hacked, and that's when you're kind of forced to make a move.
Can you name any examples of merchants you've worked with who have faced technical debt in the past or who are facing issues with it now?
Yeah, one that comes up fairly often is the use of outdated, past end-of-life ERP software. Whether that's a homegrown system that's been built, you know, since the company first started, or a third-party system like AS400 that doesn't have much industry support anymore. And not only does that have its own challenges and inefficiencies in the platform itself, for example, maintaining huge on-premise hosting platforms when a cloud solution would probably be a lot cheaper. But it also makes website replatforming more challenging, since we can't use the pre-built connectors and integrations that are already there. Everything has to kind of be built from scratch to accommodate that legacy platform.
Yeah, we have several customers using very antique versions of PHP, and we are talking about like PHP 5.3 when 5.6 was already old. And the same thing happened with Magento versions. I have personally seen 1.3 stores in the wild taking orders, and there's no way the owner of that store realized how dangerous it is. Most of these merchants, they don't really know about the ecosystem or the latest JavaScript frameworks. They're just trying to make an end, selling a few SKUs, and they really need as much help as they can get from companies like ours.
So do you have any stories about how merchants like thieves have overcome technical debt, and what were some of the?
Yeah, so it's usually an iterative approach. It might be intuitive when you're upgrading one major system to take that opportunity to kind of rebuild everything from scratch, but it's not really a realistic approach most of the time. That's a very disruptive way of doing things. And while that might lead to some wasted work to upgrade major systems one at a time, for example, your accounting system, your ERP, your fulfillment systems, your e-commerce platform, it's a lot more stable and friendly to improving your own internal processes to do these things one at a time, even if that does lead to a little bit of wasted work in the short term.
Yeah, most of the solutions we provide revolve around security. We implemented things like web application firewalls, nightly malware scans from the infra side, and use our extensive Magento knowledge to help merchants keep their stores up to date with modules like Into, PHP 7, when PHP 7 was a new shiny thing, or even created a more holistic solution like Safe Harbor to keep supporting Magento 1 after June 2020.
And okay, great. Here's another one. What are the results you've seen from merchants who overcame technical debt?
We've seen some pretty big improvements in e-commerce conversion rate and return business. And I think that really just comes from being able to turn the focus from maintenance and chasing problems to being able to add those UX features and the things that customers really care about. For example, AI-driven product recommendations, mobile-first user interfaces. It's a lot easier to focus on adding those kinds of features when we're not chasing bugs and security issues.
Yep, technical debt is not always a huge, scary problem in the form of a 10-year-old to-do task. There are many low-hanging fruits that can be taken and resolved, like using recent PHP versions with the benefit of a better performance and a lower resource usage, something that usually translates to a lower cost for the site operation. using a new platform doesn't always mean having a faster site, but having new technologies available at the core level, things like Varnish or Redis, do help when it comes to performance. And that's what we are trying to implement. And that's how we help merchants to overcome technical debt.
So is there any special kind of mindset that merchants should have about their online store when it comes to upgrading or maintaining? And how far ahead should they plan?
Let me use Magento 1 as an example. So we're just coming up to Magento 1's end of life in a matter of days now. And Magento 1 has been around since 2008. So that's a major project, replatforming to Magento 1 back when it first came out, and that lasted 12 years. And I think that's a reasonable expectation out of a platform that has that level of importance in your business. So major upgrades are probably in the range of a decade or so, and then you have to have smaller projects and upgrades along the way on the scale of months or years.
Yeah, a decade sounds about right. In my opinion, when a merchant chooses a platform, they should think they are staying with that choice forever. This might not be true, but by using this mindset, they can plan ahead and don't think they can just change platforms to avoid this technical debt. If you're here forever, you might as well keep it maintained,
Thanks, guys. So what does it mean when merchants centralize infrastructure, and how does it help solve technical debt?
One of the things that we look for when we're planning technical architecture is avoiding overlap and redundancy between the multiple systems that make up your tech stack. As one example, we move a lot of sites off of WordPress when we're replatforming their e-commerce sites, say from Magento 1 to Magento 2 or to any other up-to-date e-commerce platform. And that's just because in the past, WordPress was needed alongside most of those e-commerce platforms as a way to handle content, and that's not really so much the case anymore. So one of the benefits you get out of streamlining your tech stack is the ongoing maintenance that each of those platforms would have had over the course of years. Yeah, I think WordPress is a good example of that.
Yeah, you can gain technical debt from something you don't manage. So outsource the bits you can handle and get a respectable partner who can help you focus on the things you have to focus instead of the technical aspect of the operation. By centralizing infrastructure, you can eliminate the technical debt associated with it, but you also introduce a single point of failure. So you need to be extra careful over there. There's no magical solution, but the usual recommendation is to find someone who knows what he's doing, and that's usually a partner like Redstage or a hosting provider like Nexcess.
All right, looking through some of the other questions here. For anyone who hasn't submitted a question yet, feel free to submit a question now, and maybe we can get to it before the webinar is over. All right, so we've talked a lot about different aspects of technical debt, how it's caused, what merchants have done about it. So what are some of the pros and cons of just basic store maintenance as opposed to upgrading?
So maintenance only is a short-term approach. And we realize it's not always realistic for everyone to have the resources for a big project in the short term. So, when you're weighing the cost and time needed of a major replatforming project against other priorities, it might not always come out first. So that can only go on for so long before the missed opportunities kind of build up and catch up with you, and you really end up at a point where you're going to be forced to make a change.
Yep. In our opinion, customizations and integrations, they take a lot of time and money. So there are cases where it makes sense to actually stay a little longer in a platform because you put so many hours into the development of the store. There's no way you can replicate everything you have in like a month or two. So there are times where migration is not really possible, right? Now, from Magento 1 to Magento 2 in particular, we aren't really talking about an upgrade, but about a complete replatforming, and that's a completely different story. But you won't be hearing me, yeah, you need to migrate to Magento 2 to everybody, because that's not really the case. And we've seen many people who actually need more time to migrate because, well, they are not ready to migrate yet, you know?
All right, and I guess the flip side of that, what are the pros and cons of upgrading rather than maintaining?
So I guess the main con is it can be disruptive to your operations in good ways and in bad ways. A major migration project is going to mean not only the short-term time that your company needs to put into that project, but also the retraining and the changes in workflows that come along with it. That's an investment in the short term that can be a little painful sometimes, but that's really going to pay off in the long term by increasing efficiency and letting the front end of your business move forward.
Yeah, well, upgrading or moving to a newer version isn't always the best choice in regards to technical debt, simply because the newer the technology, the more time you have until it's phased out. So if you're planning for the long term, it might be the smarter choice to keep your store in the latest version to avoid compliance issues, among other problems. But it's not like a magical solution. It's not like a magical bullet that will fix everything. Again, for me, the answer is always, it depends on you, it depends on your store, it depends on your operation.
So how can merchants find out what they need to upgrade and what they need to keep?
Well, it's not a very big investment just to ask for some outside advice. A lot of companies stick with their habits and their business practices because it's worked, and they might not even be aware of what's out there. So, don't be afraid to get some outside opinions, find out what you might be missing, and evaluate whether it's time for you to make some changes.
Yeah, in my experience, most of the times this will be a business decision and not some developer deciding what to use. I'm that developer, so I don't have a lot to say about this, but I do believe there are many valid scenarios where a company should stay or migrate. And ultimately, what they will need from us is a trustable partner that help them make an informed choice and work with them to end up with a good implementation.
So what are some resources merchants can use if they need more information?
Well, most experienced agencies, Redstage included, are happy to give you some free advice. Don't be afraid to reach out. Pretty much anyone that's experienced in this area is going to be happy to tell you what you could be improving, what you might be missing out on, and where you could improve your business. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Partners are a great way to actually understand what's going on. And to be honest, I'm not a merchant and I've never run a store myself, but there are many good resources like Magento Merch Stocks, resources we didn't have for Magento 1. And these kind of resources, they cover a lot of the things a merchant should know while using Magento 2. The ecosystem is usually pretty receptive to merchants with questions, and events are a really nice way to get to know us too.
All right, well, thanks guys, and thanks a lot for answering a lot of the questions today. If you didn't get your question answered, feel free to send us a note at info@redstage.com. And we'll also, send individual emails to anybody who submitted a question who didn't get an answer or a reply on air. And also feel free to reach out to us at info@redstage.com if you'd like a free technology assessment. We can kind of dive into the nuts and bolts and give you a handful of suggestions of things to upgrade or maintain, and assess your situation properly. So we're happy to do that for all attendees of this webinar, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining us today.